how do you balance your regular personal life with your work, college, and really anything you do? How do you balance those things? If you're like me, you'll probably do a bunch of things. If you're also like me, you're probably gonna have to be really good at balancing those things to make sure you're really you're doing your best in anything that you're doing. I think how you do anything is how you do everything, and I like to do everything the best way possible to maximize my learning and maximize what I'm doing. So how do you balance those things? How do you balance being super ambitious and doing as many things as possible that are hard and that take your energy, but also balancing those things with maybe talking to friends or watching movies or even exercise? So the first thing that we need to understand that helped me a lot is that balance. I don't like the idea of balance. I think balance is a flawed idea. How so? Balance is a flawed idea because there are some things that should be balanced. Like what? There are certain things like sleep, nutrition, among others, that if you do not balance and take care of, then they can actually ruin your life. If you don't sleep well, if you don't eat well, then you're gonna see the effects in your health, which are not going to allow you to do the things that you wanna do. But where I don't believe balance is actually helpful is, let's say that you're working on this super cool project. In order to get this project to work and to become really good and make this project the best way it can be, you have to forget about balance, and you need to put your work and your effort, all of it into it. Of course, keeping sleep and this nutrition, health aspect of it healthy. But when some of us think of balance, we think of splitting. Let's say that you have 24 hours a day, and if you want to do 5 things, including sleeping and stuff like that, so you have about 15 hours, 15 times divided by 5, you get 3 hours to do on each thing. And that is a flawed idea, and that's not how you should think about balance. The other thing, when you say about balance, how do you balance your personal work life, your regular life with your project work life, is that when you may be doing other things, you may be thinking about, when you may be doing things in your personal life, like working out or really hanging out with friends or doing anything in general, you may be thinking about your work. You might be thinking about your friends and about your plans, your projects, or really anything. And that's something that to keep in mind, because it is important. So when you're talking about these things, you're inherently talking about being present. And again, I think this idea is also flawed, because when you say to yourself, oh, I want to be present, you're literally saying, neglecting the thousands of years of civilization that has allowed our brain to develop. Our brain is so cool. The reason why it's so cool is that I can take past data, past information, in order to understand the present, to be able to predict the future. Our brains are predicting machines. And when we say to ourselves, oh, I want to be present, you're basically neglecting what it means to be human. However, brains are wired to predict the future. We also need to be able to control that future, which to many people, to me, is such a blessing, but to others could be sort of a curse that causes overthinking and anxiety. So how do you deal with this? The way to deal with this is when you're doing something, let's say that you're working on an essay. When you're working on the essay, you're doing nothing else, you're thinking about nothing else. Let's say that you are hanging out with friends. When you're hanging out with your friends, you're hanging out with friends and doing nothing else. This becomes really hard in a virtual world where you can have many tabs open and be doing multiple things at once. But it's something that could be trained, you could learn, which is learning how to focus and doing one thing at a time, which is another idea, because you could be doing many things, but if you're doing those little things at once, then that becomes problematic. But when you're doing one, you could do many things, but if you're only thinking about one thing while you're doing that thing, then that's how you become really productive and you can achieve those things. Let me give you 2 tips that help me stay concentrated and focused when I want to do nothing and just calm my brain. I can do that. So 2 things that have helped. The first thing is taking a sheet of paper or in your phone, in your notes, and writing all the things that you're thinking about. all the projects, all the follow-ups, all the homework that you may need to do. Writing all those things. And this actually becomes really helpful when, say that you can't sleep and you're thinking about a bunch of different things. The reason why you're thinking about these things is because you don't want to forget them. So when you're able to write these things, all the things that your brain is thinking of, when you're able to write these things in a sheet of paper, in your notes, in your phone, then your brain can relax because it knows that it doesn't have to remember those things necessarily in order to not forget them. And lastly is, again, it's about learning this idea of when you want to focus on one thing and think of nothing else, focusing on nothing else. And I think something that can help you, as cliche as it might sound, meditating. And really the meditating is really the art of doing nothing, which to me has helped me to achieve this sort of art. And how can you do this? How can you learn it? Sit down, lay down, whatever position you want to do, and really do nothing. And try to think about nothing. You know, thoughts may come, but really just dismiss them and just try to think of nothing. Because really it's a way to control your mind. Learn to control your mind. All right, I hope it's helpful. I'll talk to you next time. Thank you.